Taaeen Talks, the place where we believe learning never stops, growth is a mindset, and expert insights can change the way you work and live. I'm your host, Aisha Riaz, and every episode we bring you thought leaders, innovators, and game changers who share advice that truly makes a difference. Our guest today is someone who's redefining the way we think about AI, leadership, and the future of work. Dr. Marcus Bernard is not just an expert, he's a visionary who helps organizations harness AI to unlock human potential. If you've ever wondered how technology and people can thrive together, this episode is for you. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into a conversation that might shift the way you see the future. Dr. Marcus, welcome to Taaeen Talks. I'm so excited to have you here.
And thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, you've worked across industries, advising companies on AI, leadership, and innovation. But before we dive deep, I'd love to ask what sparked your passion for AI and technology? Was there a moment that made you realize this was your calling?
Well, my background is in theoretical particle physics. So in my background, there is maths and there is programming. And so at some point in my life, I decided that I wanted to know a bit more about machine learning and neural networks. And so I did some courses. For example, the one of the famous ones with Andrew Ng from Stanford, one of the most famous machine learning courses out there, and still probably, I think, uh, the most attended MOOC ever. So I did that out of interest. I wrote my own neural networks and wanted to know how these things work, what works, what doesn't work, how you fine tune them, what the libraries are that you can implement, understanding the maths of how the neural network adjust adjusts itself and its parameters through techniques like backward propagation. And I just got into that. And and then my professional background is more in learning and training. And I then had a job offer in Cambridge from a startup that was utilizing AI for
Wow,
adaptive learning. And
lovely.
that was an offer I could not resist. So I dove straight in and there had a leading role both on the commercial side, but also as their chief evangelist. And through the chief evangelism role, I started giving talks. I went to big conferences, and this is 2 to 3 years before the Chat GPT moment. So
Wow.
at these conferences, I was the only one really talking about AI, and the room was only half full with all the weird people who were interested in AI, whereas everyone else went to what they thought were much more interesting sessions. Um, and so and so the real moment was when GPT suddenly happened, and a lot of people at conferences and such organizations turned to me and said, "Well, you've been talking about this up to here. We need you to do more now." And so it wasn't a conscious decision. I happened to be in that position when it became interesting. I also did it when it wasn't so interesting.
It's lovely to hear how you've gone through from machine learning to AI, and you've been talking about ChatGPT. ChatGPT just launched, and everybody's into it. So, what's that one thing that people don't know about machine learning? That people includes me. What is it that I may not know about machine learning? Because that's the foundations of AI, I must say.
Yeah, I think what most people don't know about machine learning is that on the whole, it is just pattern recognition. People always imagine that something more algorithmic, more pre-programmed happens. And the real magic in machine learning is that when we have something, for example, like a neural network, that the architecture somehow copying a little bit what the brain does lends itself unbelievably well for learning.
Yes.
Um, Although we don't really understand how, and it is not as algorithmic and as pre-programmed as many think that it probably is. One of my favorite examples is something that many in machine learning do very early on, which is you usually write your first neural network, and very often the example is digit recognition, digits from 0 to 9. And
Okay.
it's amazing how a very small neural network with maybe 3, 4, 5 nodes, if you have an example, 10 examples of each digit, and so only 100 examples in total, and you train the neural network, then for normal handwritten digits from 0 to 9, you get already an accuracy that is usually above 97, 98%. And without actually understanding how the neural network identifies aspects thereof. And so you can later on, you can cover up certain aspects of a number and find out what's changed. So you can find out which part of which number is the most important to the network to figure out which one is which. But you have no idea what the mechanism is. The mechanism is very natural, and so there's a lot of surprises in it. And I would say that's the thing that I find the most interesting, that most people don't see.
Amazing. You've made numbers sound so exciting for the first time. I think I'm going to explore machine learning as well after we finish this podcast. We might have to sit with you 10, 15 minutes, understand how it goes. Back to AI, artificial intelligence is a hot topic, but there's still like a lot of fear around it. People think it's going to replace jobs. Some see it as an opportunity. What's that biggest misconception you come across when talking about AI in the workplace?
When it comes to the fear, I think first of all, it is a very natural reaction. So I don't like the notion that people say, oh, people just shouldn't be afraid. That's not how humans work. So first of all, we need to understand that it is simply how humans work, and we have to accept that. Secondly, I think when it comes to the technology, the biggest misconception is to assume when or how it might replace someone.
Yes.
And that's what this fear tends to be about. And here I usually have a very blunt, almost cynical approach, which is, if the system is perfect, and let's just assume that for the moment, because that's a tall order. If the system is perfect in a certain thing, and that was your thing, it will take your job away. But what system in the world is perfect? So that assumption is already very huge. If we assume that in the near future such a system would not be perfect, then if everyone just uses the AI, then everyone ends up with exactly the same results, and there's no real competition in the market. What will make the difference between up to where the AI does it well and the last remaining bits where the AI is not perfect, that delta, that difference between company A and company B, will happen through the people. Because the AI will have a certain level, and probably everyone buys a similarly strong AI, so now everyone is on a level playing field. The differentiator will be the human. And so I don't believe that the AI in many areas at all will be able to be near perfect. And so for me, the main statement then remains that for a lot of roles and jobs, it is the humans who will make that little bit of difference that helps a company be more competitive than their competitor. And so I have a relatively positive view there. Caveat, we do have to recognize that yes, some jobs will go, especially in, for example, uh, call center services, where people deal with the same kind of calls, where there are complaints or questions about the product or service. And yeah, in the same way that we've covered most of those already in the usual frequently asked questions, that's something a machine could probably do pretty well. I don't know whether many people even enjoyed that job in the first place. So maybe there's a thing to be said about that's quite a not so nice job that it might be taking over. And then also we have to say every one of us has to ring them at some point. And if you don't have to wait, because there's always an AI available that can pick up when you call. Doesn't matter if it's midnight or 3 a.m. or 2 p.m. Then we can have our question answered much quicker and also probably with much more consistent quality. It doesn't matter so much whether we got the right person. And so I would say before we worry too much that AI will take away too many jobs, um, it'll be about the delta, and that difference is what the humans will make.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We moved from contact center, call center, customer service agents to chatbots. And these chatbots are 24/7 available. They are not upset, they are not angry, and they can just deal with your emotions. Which human skill will remain indispensable despite the rise of AI and automation?
This is a really interesting one. And we often read that AI will do the pattern recognition and the data, and the humans will do the creativity. And I think that is wrong. I think AI can also be creative, and we're already seeing that. And so I don't think that that's a human stronghold that we will keep for very long. I also think that when we look at creativity, if you have five artists doing something new, then humans will choose which one they like the best. And that's the one who wins. Not because their art maybe was better or because they were more creative. It's just what people liked. And so you can easily replace that with five people suggesting new things and what 100 AIs also suggesting new things. What's the chance that we like one of the AI pictures or one of the AI songs more? And so there the competition will be huge. So I don't think it's creativity. What I think will forever be a human stronghold, at least as far as I can foresee the future, is contextual understanding. It's that piece that only we humans seem to be able to do, that we can see any situation in a much wider context, whether that's what we call reading between the lines
Yes.
and those kind of things. And so that's where I think the real uniqueness lies.
Yes, I think it's the emotional intelligence that humans will be able to lead the way where AI will not be able to match because it's programmed to behave in a certain way. There are algorithms designed and that's how you get your results. With that, I'm thinking if there are industries who are still underutilizing AI, where do you see the biggest opportunity?
I actually think that most areas are currently underutilizing AI. But there's a very natural reason for that. Number one, people need to get used to this. People need to start having the ideas of how they want to deploy it, and people need to become comfortable that it's the right thing to do. We have a lot of concerns about mistakes that the AI can make, biases, ethical considerations, data privacy. So all of these concerns are fully justified. And so overall, I think the adoption is going much slower than the technology is advancing, but for a good reason. So I wouldn't criticize that. I would say this is probably a nice natural process where when the time is right, people adapt, and a technology doesn't have to be used the moment it comes out. We're allowed to get to know it. We're allowed to become accustomed to it, learn its strengths and weaknesses. Right now, we still look at a lot of people who don't know what the strengths and weaknesses of a large language model are. They're all on the chatbot, at least many of them are, but they don't really know what would be something where it is particularly strong and what would be something where we can make it stumble. And so I think overall we're underutilizing it, apart from maybe specifically in the tech sector, where companies are under a lot of pressure to be right at the forefront of innovation. Um, But like I said, I think there's a lot of underutilization across the board, but for very good reasons. And I think it's a good natural balance that we're going at the pace that we're going at.
Lovely. To go with the flow of how the world is moving forward with innovation, with technology, with artificial intelligence, with everything sort of for a regular person, it would look like everything is happening at once. What advice do you have for business leaders who are trying to create a culture of AI adoption within their organizations? Because if not now, someday they have to get started and they have to pick up pace with the rest of the world, how it's moving forward. Because if not, we're left behind. So, as Charles Darwin says, survival of the fittest.
Absolutely. And here's the big challenge for leadership. Leadership is there to lead from the front. And leaders need to show that they have the maturity with the technology, that they have the understanding of the technology, and that they can entice their teams, their function, to follow them. And so, one of the things I see very often, which I will criticize, is that these people are apparently too busy with the day job to upskill themselves and experiment. And that might be a correct evaluation in a very short term vision. Because, of course, if there are three things I really, really need to do today, then I don't have time today to upskill myself and learn AI. But this is not sustainable long term. And it will become a very challenging moment when these leaders realize that other people on their team are many steps ahead. I'm not saying a leader always has to be the best at everything that their team does, but I do think you also can't be far behind. And so this is a new technology, and everyone is starting from the same point. A CEO of a global corporation has just as much experience with AI as the new joiner from the apprenticeship program who joins a unit somewhere in the world. They are on the same level playing field. But it cannot be that over the next year or two, the apprentice suddenly knows 100x more than the CEO. So this is where I think this kind of thinking is very short-sighted, and I strongly encourage the leaders that I work with to stay right at the forefront and lead from the front. And that will not only enable them to create a culture and a mindset among their teams, it, I think, also creates much more credibility and will create a culture of experimentation. Only if your leader understands it, understands that it is something that needs to be experimented with, where sometimes the result will be, well, it didn't work. Only if that is the culture will you get the experimentation, and only then will you get the innovation.
Absolutely right. With that, what comes to my mind is your recent LinkedIn post where you've posted about Abu Dhabi government going fully digital in 2 years' time. What are the key steps that all, at least the majority of government entities and their leaders could take to fall along with this strategy and make it a very successful one?
The biggest challenge is that it's a people transformation, not a technology transformation. If we want to do this well and be at the forefront, like the big bold vision that Abu Dhabi has communicated, then it needs to start with the people. We need AI literacy across the workforce. We need to have a solid understanding of how these systems work, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, and why the AI policy says something. I can't have a workforce that doesn't understand why the AI policy talks about privacy, why the AI policy talks about data protection. That's a basic literacy level that everyone needs to have in order for this new system and this new world to function. And then only when we have that in place can we build AI fluency on top, which is where not everyone, but some people will be experimenting more and they will come up with innovative ideas. And here, I normally don't quote people, but this is one where I can't not quote Steve Jobs when he says we don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people because they can tell us what to do. And this I think foresee will happen with AI is that you have really good, solid employees at every level of the organization. Many of them have been there for years. They know inside out how the organization works. They know what the challenges are and what the innovative opportunities are. If they have a certain level of AI literacy and AI fluency, they will contribute fantastic ideas, even if it's only in their small little unit or team. But they will contribute really valuable ideas, which, when added together, is what transforms the organization. It's not that we buy two or three specific AI tools and now we have them and now we are innovative. That's not how it works. I think bringing everyone along is really key here.
So it's key to have people, technology, and training in place. With that, what comes to my mind is you've spoken about the intersection of AI and learning. How do you see AI transforming corporate trading and professional development?
That's a really good question. The opportunity here is for personalization. We know that in learning, personalization means that I can work with a learner much more specific to their current understanding and their rate of progress. And a good one-to-one tutor will pull out exactly the right questions, not so difficult that the student despairs, and not so easy that they just get the next five right. They want to test their students and they need to give them that at the right level. And a good tutor will keep that level going. Always that there's a challenge, but the challenge is not too little and not too big. And that level of personalization will make a huge difference. If, in addition to that, we can give practice environments and immersive opportunities, then we have a really good package that in the digital world can support what we're else doing in workshops, in coaching, in mentoring, with our teams, on our own. And I think there will be a really interesting hybrid future where the in-person training and workshops and learning and the digital elements will combine to give us something that is truly fantastic, very exciting, and very personalized to each individual learner and how they're progressing and what they need.
So, for young professionals like me and entrepreneurs looking to work in AI and data science, what key advice would you give?
Oh, that's a really difficult one because that's where we really don't know how the future of that profession will go. There's some out there who say that AI will take over those roles, and there's some who think that there will be still a human stronghold somewhere in that profession. So for this one, we'd really have to get a crystal ball out. Um, for the foreseeable future, I think there's a lot of opportunities still out there for specialists in this area. And my advice would always be start really early, especially with the programming language and with the maths. The maths most of us have to do in school anyway, so you don't really have to do anything there to start early. Um, but not everyone starts coding when they're 8 or when they're 7. And that is something I would recommend. Now, some listeners might think, but Marcus, we've had famous people like Jensen Huang from NVIDIA say that this is no longer going to have a future. I would say that I'm not only giving this advice because I think they will end up working directly in coding.
Yes, unfortunately, we would.
Giving this advice because I think there's a lot of brain development also associated with early on in life starting to program. and in parallel having maths. It changes the way people think. It changes the way people think about processes. It changes the way people can visualize or think through algorithms and flowcharts. And I think those are skills in the critical thinking area that are invaluable. So, regardless of whether I'm right or maybe more likely Jensen Huang is right, um, I still think that if you go down this route, you've learned some things that you can apply in a wider range um, and spectrum.
So I was good with equations. I'm thinking I'll be good with learning some of programming language, at least algorithms. I'd love to play around the flowcharts. So, Marcus, this conversation has been incredibly insightful, from breaking down AI myths to sharing how organizations can balance technology with human potential. There's so much to take away from this. Before we wrap up, I'd love to ask if there's one mindset shift or a habit you think everyone should adopt to thrive in the AI driven future, what would it be?
One thing, it would have to be experimentation. I think the mindset shift that will really help anyone is don't be afraid, go out and experiment with the tools and just try things and be human. Most of us get a tool, they try to do two sensible things, and then they try to break it. But in all of these processes, there is learning involved. You're getting to know the system, you're getting to know how systems react. And that is the prerequisite to then having innovative ideas of what else you could be doing with the system. And I still tell myself that all the time. For example, one of my favorite podcasts is Jordan Wilson's Everyday AI Show. And Jordan also does a really nice prompting course as part of the show. And he used to run that 2 or 3 times a week, even live. And he's had thousands of people go through that course. And I used to still every 5 or 6 months attend the course. And the reason I did that was not because I would learn something new, because I would say Jordan and I are on a level playing field there. But what would happen is that I would hear him talk about something that I already know. But I would suddenly think, oh my God, I've never applied this way of thinking to this problem I'm currently dealing with. And so I would always come out of his show again, not having learned anything new factually, but having 2 or 3 really good ideas of where 2 or 3 dots that I already know, I should now connect in a slightly different way for a problem that I'm solving. And so my own advice I even give to myself, which is experiment more, and only through experimentation and through continuously thinking about these things do new ideas come up. Having understood the theory does not mean that you can immediately apply it to problem solving.
All right, listeners, just like Marcus highlighted, we have to keep trying. Even if we fail, try again, experiment, and I'm sure you will get where you want to be, even with AI. And with that, we wrap up another episode of Taaeen Talks. If you found value in today's discussion, here's what I want you to do: share your biggest takeaway on social media, tag us, and let's keep this conversation going. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's curious about the future of work. Marcus, thank you so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Until next time, listeners, keep learning, keep reading, keep leading, and keep growing.